Hey everybody, Billy Watkins here with the Whole Package by Premier Packaging. I am with my co-host today,
Hi.
Mackenzie, Crigger. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
I feel since you're here today, my duties, my responsibilities will be much less. I can be almost silent, which the audience might like. And
I doubt it.
we're also joined by with Adara Schneider. Right?
Hi, I am, that is correct. I am the sustainability specialist here with Mackenzie, working with Mackenzie.
You're on our sustainability team.
Yes, I am.
What's your background? How did you make it here?
I got a college degree in environmental science up in Seattle and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And then the pandemic hit the year I graduated, and I found myself working at a recycling facility, and I realized that we have like such a problem with packaging not being sustainable. And I decided I wanted to go into sustainable packaging because packaging, as we all know, is very important. It's not going anywhere. It's a key pillar of our society, but that doesn't mean that it can't be better for the environment while still helping people.
Right.
So.
Tell me a little bit about what were you doing working at the recycling facility?
I was doing research for King County, which is where I lived.
Okay.
They wanted to see how many people actually knew what they were doing with recycling and if they were recycling correctly and recycling the right things. And it turns out a lot of people aren't. I think Seattle, where I lived, was better than a lot of areas. So it wasn't terrible, but there was a lot of food and trash that was being put into our waste stream.
I was kind of hoping you were first job out of college, you were going to be shoveling cans or something. But
No,
a little more.
I was hands-on in the recycling. It was pretty gross. So
Okay.
it's similar.
You've seen that side of it.
There is a smell that recycling centers have that you can never forget once you've worked there.
It's like a paper plant, you really old sulfury. So let's go back to the basics.
Yes.
I think this stuff's been around for a while. The three pillars of sustainability. What are they?
So you probably have all heard reduce, reuse, recycle. I think all of us growing up in elementary school heard reduce, reuse, recycle. But now there are technically 5 that we talk about, and so we've added refuse and rot to that mix. And so when we say refuse, it's I don't actually need that. If you're going, if you're picking up your coffee and they offer you a straw, do you actually need that straw? Probably not, because most coffee places now have that nice little sippy cup. So
yeah, we were talking about this earlier. I kind of get angry when I get a straw with a glass of water. I mean, as long as the glass is clean, I'm going to be drinking, right? I mean, why do I need a straw?
And straws give you wrinkles.
Oh my goodness.
Big concern.
It's a beauty crisis also. We gotta get rid of them.
So it's almost there's no reason that they do it, but the companies aren't incentivized to. I'm thinking of fast food too. Do I need that many napkins or something we should all be thinking about?
When you take something home, you picked up your takeout order. Presumably, you're taking it home. Do you actually need plastic cutlery with it? Probably not.
So that's refuse. What about rot?
People are kind of ugh, rot.
Rot. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just say I think rot falls under the compost cycle that we all know as well. It's you're not just throwing your food in the garbage bin anymore. Hopefully you're either composting at home or through facilities with your cities. It depends obviously on where you live, but composting is a big one now.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between biodegradable and compostable, right?
So we talk about this all the time. I always get them confused. Biodegradable is essentially anything that can break down and go back into the earth. So technically, if you have a piece of a pizza box, it'll eventually break down.
Takes a while.
It takes a long time.
How long? What are we talking?
It depends on a lot of factors. So for something like a pizza box, if I will line the bottom of my garden every year with corrugate, because corrugate is compostable and it will actually enrich the soil. So a pizza box would work there too. But if it's in that situation, by the end of the summer, it's broken down. Like you don't see it.
Right,
You know,
right.
my plants have grown up through it
Yep.
or down into it typically because I put it on the bottom, then the soil. But you know, if you break it up, put it in your compost bin, you're looking at a couple months, 2 or 3 maybe. Unfortunately, if it ends up in a landfill, it's probably going to be there forever because it's not exposed to oxygen, and that's really what makes something break down.
Because it's piled on top of other stuff, and that's probably where
Yeah.
most of the stuff ends up, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's actually why, just to come back to the rot, composting is so important because we have these products right now. You can't recycle a pizza box because of the food that's on the corrugate.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And then if
it
you
gets
toss
cheese or
Yeah.
oil.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah.
And then if you toss it in the trash, it's not
Yeah.
gonna go anywhere. So rot is really important because it is something that can break down and help enrich the soil. But unless you compost it correctly, it's not gonna biodegrade. So.
The only problem being if on a bad year, I don't have a garden big enough to use all the pizza boxes. Right?
Yep, exactly.
That's how many you're going through a month.
I'll be doing everybody's yard in the neighborhood.
You go through Billy's neighborhood and it's just like, as far as the eye can see, pizza boxes.
Pizza
Yeah.
boxes. How the average person, how are they going to know what's biodegradable and what's compostable? How do we figure that out?
It's a great question. One of the struggles that we've seen with new compostable packaging that comes out, like we have several compostable air pillows, and most people look at those and they think that they're plastic. In our instance, we do provide plastic ones, but we also source ones that are made from plant fibers that you can toss in your compost bin.
But they look alike.
But they
like
look
plastic.
alike. And so you have to look at the label. You have to look and see, and lots of times people just don't know what those labels mean. Even as a sustainability professional, Adara and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
There are so many labels. If you look at a plastic label, you're like, can I recycle this here? It says it's a 2. Does my location recycle a 2? And
So if our customers were buying this type of air pillow from us, the end user, when they get it into their home, and if the label specifies and they know what they're doing with it, they can put this in their recycle bin.
The compostable ones, you don't want that to go in your recycle bin. You want it to go in your compost bin or your
the
yard
trash,
waste bin or the trash. Exactly.
Because eventually it'll break down in a landfill.
You do have to be careful though with the phrasing on these things. There's something called greenwashing that we talk a lot about
Right.
in our industry where it says that it can do something, but that doesn't mean that it's the right thing to do. For example, flushable wipes. Yes, you can technically flush them down the toilet, but they're not going to biodegrade in the same way that toilet paper will, and they'll clog the pipes and they'll cause tons of sewage problems. It's a whole thing.
I've seen that on TV.
It's a whole
like
thing,
these
really.
Poor people that have to just
It's terrible.
fix
Yeah, it's terrible.
downstream because of all the
Yeah,
it's really bad.
Yeah.
So the thing that I have been told, and obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but you want something to say biodegradable versus compostable on if you're looking for a product that can be put into the compost.
You want it to say compostable
Versus,
compost.
for compost,
for
not
compost.
biodegradable.
Because one nice way to think about this, so there are lots of things that are biodegradable that are not compostable. In theory, styrofoam is biodegradable because it will disintegrate if you leave it out in the sun. But it's plastic, and so you don't want that in your soil.
Right.
Gotcha. You want it. I mean, if it's going to be used and it's going to end up. I mean, it's preferable that ends up in a landfill.
Absolutely. And funny thing about styrofoam is that it is highly recyclable, but it's hard to recycle because it is it's just so lightweight. You have to have so much of it in order for it to be profitable. But in a landfill, because it's usually awkwardly shaped, it creates air pockets, so it actually can speed up the process. So because it actually lets air in.
Have you ever been to a landfill? Have you
I
talked
have.
about
That's
this?
how
Have
I
you?
learned that.
Okay.
I have not.
Fascinating. Super fascinating.
sure.
I can imagine. On average, how big is depends on the city that it's servicing, right?
Depends on the city. There was one in California, really close to where I lived when I lived in California, and it was like they called it Trash Mountain, and it got so big that they had to close it because they were like, Trash Mountain.
Oh, God.
And it's because it's processing most of the waste that's coming out of LA and Orange County. and
Right.
it got so big. But there are lots of really innovative, interesting things that are happening at landfills now. Methane capture and being able to create recyclable natural gas out of that, or use that methane that's coming out to actually power the forklifts or the bulldozers that are running at that facility.
Actually working in that, yeah.
It is really crazy to see how much waste, recycling, etc. we produce as a society when you actually work at one of those facilities. Like the quantity at which this recycling facility filled each day with recycling that could not be processed in an amount of time to keep it moving was crazy. I mean, like we started by working, for example, in the back of this building we're in, and by the end of the week we were like outside and it was just filled. You couldn't even get past it. It was crazy.
It is almost an insurmountable thing, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of eyes on it now, right?
Absolutely.
There is. I mean, if we're talking about it, I mean, we're doing something which is better than nothing.
People are getting really creative, and really, I guess it's an industry that's very solution oriented.
Right.
Absolutely. And not to come full circle, but that's why like reduce, reuse, recycle, rot, rubbish is so important, because it's getting those things in the right areas so that they can actually be taken care of in the correct way.
Let's not to back up a little bit, but let's go back to you, Adara, working with Premier. How long have you been? Did you say?
I started August of 2021, so about a year and a half.
Okay, so still in COVID times.
Yes, in
and you're
COVID
working.
times.
You're working out of San Francisco, right?
Yes, I am based now in San Francisco. I started in Seattle, but have been fully remote the whole time. So.
And I assume you had a lot to do with our recently published sustainability report, right?
She did.
I did, yeah. I was doing a lot of the behind the scenes data information, and then obviously, working with Mackenzie and Steve, our writer, on the writing and making it look pretty, and yeah, it was really fun. And it's very exciting. I love talking about it.
It's exciting now that it's done.
Yeah, it was a lot of work.
Have you read the whole thing? Do you feel like you've gone through every
I think
single?
probably like a
Multiple
handful of
times.
times, like two handfuls of times. Yeah.
What are we seeing? You spoke a little bit about the air pillows, that sort of thing. What are we seeing trend-wise in packaging that can overcome some of these issues we're talking about, and specifically, what's Premier doing? What are we offering?
Oh, great questions.
There's a lot of really exciting, like innovative new materials that people are coming out with for packaging. I think that specifically like compostable, biodegradable packaging is becoming really big. I went to a conference about a year ago where they talked about seaweed packaging, which I can't stop thinking about. I think it's so interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like people are really bought in on that, which is great. And it's just about finding one that's, cost effective for everybody as well, and actually protects their products. But I think rubbish is hopefully going a little bit lower in the pyramid, and rotten recycler moving to the top.
It's amazing because it's one of those kind of entrepreneurial opportunities that the folks that get in on this stuff, I mean, it's going to be, it'll pay dividends, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you see now, so many organizations are really focused on like reusable packaging. Lots of makeup brands have shifted to a reusable option, which I think is so interesting because, I can remember going to the Clinique counter with my mom when I was a child, and she would buy refills for her makeup. And then I remember at some point it shifted and they were like, oh no, like here's just a whole new thing. And she was like, but I have my old loose powder container. I like it.
Right.
Like, why do I need this whole other thing? And you've really seen it swing back the other direction. And now it's almost a luxury item. You see, large brands really, the luxury brands are really focusing in on reusable and refillable.
Right.
Same with grocery stores, not to
absolutely.
cut you off, but you can take your mason jar to the grocery store now and get your almonds or whatever it is that you're purchasing.
I find the same thing with my my hair pills. They're sending me, refills in a bag, and I put it in the bottle. Just a little something for the audience out there.
A little sneak peek into
it's
Billy's
it's
life.
crazy. It's falling out like I don't know what the hell. I hit 40 and whoo, That's the way it goes. How is all of this change being pushed? Is it folks like Premier? Is it the consumer? Is it state and legislative bodies?
You sort of see it coming from all directions. Historically, consumers have really driven this, and in large part because consumers for decades have been told that recycling is your responsibility, but when they're not provided the resources to be able to recycle, they say, hey, I buy this thing all the time, there's nothing for me to do with it in the location where I live, so I want a different option. And because they're going to the brands that they purchase, and then those brands come to Premier and say, we need something that's more environmentally friendly, we need something that's recyclable or reusable. So it sort of comes from all directions,
Right.
And then legislation is certainly helping.
Yeah.
You see EPR
Well, I mean, we were just
legislation.
talking to some folks in our Canada division the other day, and I mean, it's not an option for them.
No.
The government is getting rid of single-use items and
Yep.
and phasing stuff out over a certain amount of time. So I mean, it's either change or be changed, I guess, right?
Yep.
It's that, and I mean, you need accessibility too, right? Like I could have the reusable jars, the recyclable corrugate, and all of the compostable products, but if I have nowhere to take them to have that happen, then they're just going to end up in a landfill also. And
Yeah.
I think one thing we didn't know earlier that I wanted to mention was that there is a difference between compostable and at-home composting. Like you have products that need to be taken to a compost facility because they're being exposed to the right temperatures, the right oxygen levels to actually decompose, whereas if you're putting it in your backyard or at home compost bin, it's probably not going to break down in the same way.
If you see like the compostable plastic cups, that's not going to break down in your at-home compost bin. It has to go to an industrial composting facility.
Okay.
And if you don't live in a place where you have one of those, then that's going into the trash, and it's going to behave just like a regular plastic because it's still
It's
a polymer.
not gonna
Yeah,
Right.
it's just a different kind of polymer.
Dang it, it's kind of confusing.
It
Yeah,
is.
it
It
is.
really is.
So I mean,
It
part of
really
the
is.
challenge here is streamlining the information and the
It's a huge educational issue and really helping because consumers want to do the right thing. So many people recycle things like wishfully. We call it wish cycling, and like I'm going to put this in and I'm going to hope this is recyclable.
close my eyes and it'll turn into a butterfly.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Exactly. So it's a big job.
Yeah.
Certainly.
I think-
And go ahead.
I should say, I think that's something I realized also through school is we were taught so much about, corporations do X, Y, and Z. That's not great. We need to join legislation and do these things. But for me, I was one of the only people in my class who was like, no, I want to do the other end of the spectrum because we need people on all
All
three,
sides.
all three
Yeah.
corners of this issue for it to change. So
I mean, and if customers are demanding it and companies are able to provide it, then
Yep.
that's kind of where you want to be.
Absolutely.
How can our customers get started with their sustainability efforts if they have not already? Where does Premier fit in?
That's a great question. So for us, we talk about asking why a customer does what it does.
We ask
And-
why.
Yeah. And so understanding what their goals are really helps us. Are they focused on reducing packaging? Are they focused on having something that's recyclable in most of the markets where they work? So when we have a customer that says, hey, I want to be more sustainable, understanding what that means for them really helps us figure it out. If they're really focused on their carbon footprint, then maybe we redesign their boxes so that we can get more pallets on a truck.
Right,
And
right.
that will reduce your carbon footprint almost quicker than just about anything that you do, because transportation is the piece that's very hard to control.
yeah.
Simple little things.
Yeah.
It can be really simple.
Sustainability is everywhere, right? Like you can look at almost any aspect of what you're doing, especially within your business,
Yeah.
and find a solution to make it a little bit more sustainable. But to start, the We Ask Why is a really great way to do that, because you want to take like little bites before you're, eating the whole pizza. So come back.
We were talking stretch assessments. I
Yeah.
guess that kind of goes into it too.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
savings there.
Yeah, absolutely. When one of our sales folks walk into a warehouse and they see, oh my goodness, like this isn't getting stretched properly, we could down gauge this, we could do something different, and we could put in some automation. We've seen organizations be able to reduce their plastic consumption by 45 tons. I just did a case study for a rep the other day, and just by providing a different gauge, using some automation, mean, that can be huge. And so you think, not only are you not consuming this, but it's a smaller amount that you need to recycle. It's less that you have to bring into your facility. So you're saving yourself money. You're saving yourself a carbon footprint about what you have to bring in. So it's, easy. It can be really small things that can make a huge difference.
What amazes me and what gives me hope or heart about this whole thing is you're way younger than I am, but you grew up with this, where this was it. I mean, it was taught in schools. Your degree is. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
That's a great thing.
I think one thing I realized when I came to Premier is that recycling is not everywhere. Like, I grew up in a big city in California where I remember going to the recycling facility when I was like 8 years old with my dad, and then I remember getting curbside recycling. Like, it was very common, and it still is. And when I came here, I was having a conversation with someone who was telling me that they don't have a recycling facility for like an hour from where they live,
right?
And that they used to just burn the boxes. And I was like, well, I get it, because like I couldn't even
what
be
else
angry,
are you
because
do? Right.
a 2-hour drive is far to have a car full of boxes. You know what I mean? Or whatever, pizza box, any kind of corrugated recycling product. But it's very different from how I was raised, and I think that is something that I didn't realize also, like why legislation, location is so important.
I don't know if I've brought this up before, but I do chop up my Christmas tree and burn it. Is that bad? Is that? I'm not. Yeah. It's no different than just firewood, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
At the end of the day,
it's like the way it sparkles. The kind of pops.
It's sort of a net value, because there's a lot of carbon that was stored in that tree, and then when you burn it, you're releasing carbon, but it's
okay.
Sort of evens out.
I always say this and now I've got somebody else that I can bug about it. Like, everything I do in the house, I just want to call you guys and say, what the hell do I do with this, right? And now I feel
call Mackenzie, so I get it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
And I think what we're seeing here is it's all hands on deck.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. One of the things that we really talk about especially with the sustainability report, that I think is really just showcased, we didn't do it on our own. Yeah. We depended on data that came from all parts of this organization, and we depended on help from the sales team, from our operations, from our plant managers, from our warehouses, from the folks that manage our freight. It's an all hands on deck.
Sustainability, and this is a huge topic I'm bringing up so we can talk about it another time, but is called ESG in like the business world for a reason. It covers environment, social, and governance. Like, it is across all 3 areas, all 3 pillars, because it's impacted everywhere, right?
I mean, we're all we're all here. We're all on spaceship Earth, and
absolutely
we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's everyone's responsibility.
Exactly.
A huge topic, and I always enjoyed talking with you guys.
Well, we love
about
coming
it,
and chatting
Mackenzie.
with you.
Adara, very nice to meet you.
It was
today.
nice to meet you as well. This is fun.
Yeah,
we'll do it again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In San Francisco.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, please, come on. We'll do it at the beach.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Billy Watkins here for the whole package by Premier Packaging. Good to be with you today. Until next time. Thanks. Bye.
Do you have comments, questions, or ideas about this topic? If so, we'd like to hear from you. Please visit primpack.com/podcast to let us know what you think. Thanks.